All right, we're getting people joining up. Hello, everyone. If you're just joining us, we are about to get started in just another minute or two, giving a few people a chance to join. And we'll get started in just another minute or so. So thank you for being on time and early. And just as a little housekeeping, throughout this presentation, you can throw your questions into the meeting chat and I will moderate them to our speakers. So feel free to ask your questions, and at the end, we can open it up to a little bit more freestyle. But of course, if you have questions about things on the slide that's being shown, please don't hesitate to ask. All right, well, it's 3 minutes after. What do you say, team? Let's get started.
Yep, I think so.
Good idea.
All right,
Perfect.
places, everyone. All right, buckle up, everyone. Keep your arms and legs inside the journal club at all times. So, good evening. Welcome to this journal club or journal review brought to you by Physicians Research Center Plus. This is the educational uh, offering from Physicians Research Center known as CERIUM, and this is our journal club for April, which will discuss 2 articles about the hemp loophole and public health data about hemp. I'd like to introduce you to Teresa Simon, who is the CEO of Physicians Research Center and one of our presenters today, to share with us a little bit as we get rolling about what PRC is. So Teresa, would you mind walking us through a little bit of information about this organization as we wait for people to show up?
Sure. Good evening and welcome to Physicians Research Center's third CERIUM Journal Club. We're happy you've joined us. Physicians Research Center Plus is a company that was originally a clinical research center, and it's evolved the past few years, adding a network of physicians and researchers to our research pillar now called SALIS. And we also have a pillar for our analytics, which is Buds Info, and you'll hear a little bit about that tonight. And then CERIUM is our education program, which does these journal clubs as well as it has a whole education program and curriculum if you are interested in joining. So you can check out the website if you want to learn more. It's prc-trials-plus.com. So tonight we're talking about, as Jaihan already mentioned, my favorite subject, which is hemp, and 2 articles: Closing the Loophole, Public Health Priority, and Delta 8, the adverse events from the FDA National Database, which was actually I published and co-authored with Jaihan and a few other colleagues. We have 2 doctors discussing the topic tonight, in addition to me. Dr. Phil Malloy, who is a rheumatologist, newly retired in Massachusetts. However, he remains very active in caring for patients. He also is still, I believe, working in the lab, keeping himself very busy. Dr. Jehan Marcoux is a cannabinoid researcher and expert witness to discuss this topic and many other related topics. So I'm going to turn it over. Actually, before I do that, Dr. Kamen, who's usually joins us, will not be joining us this evening. He has a very special occasion he needs to celebrate, so we are balancing work and life this evening with Dr. Kamen. So I'll turn it over to Dr. Marcoux to start the conversation.
All right, thank you very much. And just letting everyone know that if you are planning on using a hemp product or currently using one or having experiences from one, you can use this QR code to report those effects. This is one of the research tools from PRC known as Buds Info, and we'll refer to this again towards the end of the presentation. So as was mentioned, we'll be discussing 2 papers. The first one is on your right, which will help us set the stage. It was published in JAMA fairly recently and is entitled Closing the Loophole on Hemp-Derived Cannabis Products, a Public Health Priority. Our other paper that Teresa will lead the discussion on is on Delta 8 report. So we're going to talk about some of the hemp cannabinoids as a whole and the hemp drug products, as I like to refer to them as. And then Teresa is going to discuss her findings from a very specific, isomer of THC. So first, to kick things off, since I think technically we have a quorum, enough people, we're going to hit some poll questions real quick. Don't worry too much about the answers. They will only determine your future prospects in the cannabis industry. It's a joke, but take a moment if you have access to a computer while you're dialing into this to answer the question. The first one is, do you think hemp products will stall or descheduling efforts? Let me see if this looks like the poll is already ended. Hold on, let me do this again. I'm gonna relaunch the poll. Don't worry, I've done this. All right, here we go. Here are the poll questions. Please feel free to fill them out. Do you think hemp products will stall or descheduling efforts? Yes or no? Are there any serious adverse events associated with hemp products? What is the limit of THC and any related synthetic isomer that can be on the label for a hemp farm bill product? Is it 5 milligrams, 10 milligrams, 3,000 milligrams, or any amount? What is the least harmful aspect of hemp drug products? Is it inaccurate labeling, adulterants, contaminants, or the health claims? And then a fun one, what future topics might you want to hear about? More about THC and isomers, history and anthropology. Do you want us to review some books? I've definitely written some book reviews for some publications about stuff in the cannabis space. There's tons of textbooks out there. So we're going to keep the polls open again. Lots of people feel like, hemp has been a great experiment to see what would happen if cannabis was just completely descheduled. Some people think it's been a great experiment, and some people think the results need to be looked at a little more closely. But again, I guess if you were a politician and you saw what was happening with hemp, would you want to deschedule cannabis right away? I don't know. It's a good question. So we're getting a fair number of answers. 75% have participated. Wow. Thank you. Interesting. Great participation. All right, I'm gonna give it another 30 seconds, 20 seconds, counting down. Oh wow, lots of interesting results here. Currently, nobody's interested in history or anthropology about cannabis, which is one of my favorite subjects. So I must be some sort of nerd. All right, great. We're gonna end the poll. And we're going to share some results here. So, and we can throw this poll in again if we have time at the end to see if anything has shifted. But do you think hemp products will stall the or descheduling efforts with cannabis? It's almost split evenly. Like we have 43% saying yes and a little over 50% saying no. Are there any serious adverse events associated with hemp products? Half the people say yes, some say no. And there could be, but they're unaware of any data demonstrating this. So I think that's actually my favorite response right there. What is the limit of THC and any related synthetic isomer that can be on a label for a hemp farm bill? Someone wrote 5 milligrams. You might be confusing that with cannabis. Some people said 3,000. Good guess. Whoever said any amount, you're right, because it's a percent by weight thing. So the heavier you make the product, the more THC you can make or put in the product. All right, so the least harmful aspect of hemp drug products. A lot of people said the inaccurate labeling. Some people said the health claims, right? If they say it's going to give you some newfound ability or cure disease, maybe that's the least harmful thing is the marketing for it to improve brain function or something like that. And a lot of people want to see more on this in cardiovascular research. I'm so glad to see that we're actually doing that in June. And then I think in July, we're doing anxiety and some mental health. And next month, we'll be looking at pain. So thank you, everyone, for your participation there. Awesome. All right. So closing the loophole on hemp-derived products, I'm going to walk us through this paper a little bit, and you're welcome to use the chat to put in any questions, comments, or you can wait till the end if you'd like to go back to any slides and discuss this. So this paper was a commentary was written by uh, a few PhDs based out of California from the University of either Southern California, as well as having some other affiliations there. So what they generally commented on are three things that I pulled out from the paper. One is that there's a federal policy loophole that allows intoxicating cannabis products to be commercially marketed and sold in the US, including in states where recreational cannabis is not legal. They assert that many of the potential harms stem from a lack of regulation, including the potential for harmful contaminants and accidental exposure. Now, the FDA does do some low-level regulation of these products for label claims and issues warnings to companies to change their labeling, but it's a bit of a game of whack-a-mole at this point. Uh, the most the most significant harm from these products that these authors said was that there's no standardized approach to synthesizing these drugs, and the byproducts could be potentially dangerous or toxic, but we don't really know. And I thought that was a fascinating thing. Like, hey, if you're going to make these, you should at least have a standardized approach, some standards, some regulations around synthesizing them. It's almost like they're saying that there's a pathway to actually do this because making compounds, as we'll show, from CBD, which what hemp has a lot of, into various tetrahydrocannabinols, uh, excuse me, is quite easy. So the hemp farm bill, as this article talks about, defines marijuana, but not hemp. So it talks about stalks, fibers, seeds, and preparations thereof. Technically, a resin extracted from the plant is still quote unquote marijuana. The hemp farm bill, first passed in 2014, didn't allow any commercial sales, just people to grow it. And then in 2018, um, was allowed it to be sold. And then it technically expired and is awaiting updates and approval. We don't know quite what will happen with it at this point, but basically this law said if there's no more than 0.3% THC on a dry weight basis, the product is legal. And so what's that led people to do is to harvest hemp, have it tested for THC, and then extract it, concentrate it, and put it in just about everything. So what does this look like? So let's take a few quick peeks at some products on the market. We'll look at some labeling and things like that. So here are some hemp products. As you can see, this is a concentrate THC product. There's 30% THC flower and purified crystals. These are all hemp products because they came originally from hemp. But there's really, in my professional opinion, no real significant difference between these and commercial cannabis products for adult use or medical purposes. However, there are some differences. Here is a 3,000 milligram edible with 20,000 milligrams total cannabinoids in it. It's known as the BFG Party Pack Gummy. So this is the largest legal THC gummy in history, is their motto. So that is a hemp product, not to be confused with a cannabis product, because you can only have 10 milligrams per dose in a cannabis product. Here is a 45,000 milligram product, which is advertised to stimulate brain health, improve memory, increase focus, and sharpen attention. I think being marketed towards college students. So if that's not potent enough, there is a 15 million milligram hemp gummy. 15 million milligrams is about 15 kilos. So I'm not sure they can fit 15 kilos of THC distillate into a jar that size. How much is 15 kilos? It's about the weight of a sledgehammer, which is probably what you'll feel like hit you if you take this product. Or this product could, again, be totally mislabeled. And I think when we start to see claims like 15 million milligrams, it's probably not an accurate label on these products. So here is a hemp CBD product, and I just wanted to walk people through how kind of egregious this is real quick, because if you add up everything on it, um, there's oftentimes discrepancies. Like in this product, you have a 2,500 milligram bear. That's what it says they weigh. And it says it has 2,000 milligrams or 2 grams of sugar. Okay. There's 100 milligrams of CBD in the entire package. So not per, so that's a fraction. And you have some calcium and potassium, so you don't cramp up while you're using the product, I guess. But there's about, and then if you account for THC, 0.03%, you're still short about 400 milligrams. What is it? Who knows? Can't look up a testing record for the product. So we really don't know what, a significant portion of this product is. So what is in these products and how are they made? Here's one example, just a chromatogram of some hemp flower that was analyzed. It has some Delta 8 in it. Let me pull out the trusty laser pointer. So it has some Delta 8 and Delta 9 THC. Those are those small peaks right there. It has a lot of these hexyhydrocannabinol compounds, just two kind of unknown isomers, which could be more potent or less potent than THC. So this is some hemp flower that meets the definition of less than 0.3% THC, but has been adulterated or contaminated with products that are either the result of synthesizing Delta 8 or intentionally synthesized and added there. This is kind of old news for a lot of people because the WHO put out a report a long time ago, said it's really easy to make all these weird isomers of THC that no one has been exposed to and we haven't studied. It's really easy. You can just heat it up with some ethanol or acetic acid or vinegar, and you make tons of isomers. It's a really bad idea. No one should do it. And a bunch of people said, let's do it. Let's take all of these isomers and then let's give them to people. And I think that some of the other issues that arise from these products is these are just the byproducts from trying to make Delta 8 from CBD through a simple reaction. Many of these have their own pharmacology, their own diverse effects. Delta 10 THC is its own line of products in the market. But there's also all these other compounds that, again, are byproducts from the synthesis of Delta 8, for example, from CBD. So what are states doing to address this? States are taking a number of approaches. One of my favorite approaches is that Colorado and Oregon have included the Delta 8 and other isomers in their definition of uh, of have included those isomers in their definition of THC. Most people think THC is Delta 9. THC is actually a class of compounds, right? Even Delta 9 THC is a class of compounds because there's several isomers of Delta 9. There's several isomers of Delta 8. The late Raphael Mechoulam used to have a slide in almost every presentation where we break down all the THC molecules. So THC is a very, very broad category. Even Delta 8 THC is really just the tip of the iceberg of what Delta 8 can be. Some states have outright clarified that these compounds are illegal in their state. And New York has actually updated its regulations to ban many of these products, but if you walk around Manhattan, it's not going so well. So one of the issues with the regulations, I think this quote sums it up well with this attorney. Unfortunately, nobody that was dealing with the hemp farm bill legislation knew what Delta 8 was. So we end up in this situation where you have a compound that is banned in many states, is listed as a Schedule 1 drug in the DEA Orange Book. So it's completely legal by some people's definitions, depending on how it's derived. So what were the main issues from this commentary? One is that there's no age gating, there's no testing, there's no labeling standards, and there's no standards for how products are synthesized. Products are labeled and advertised as things like good for brain health, and my favorite claim that I saw recently was, good for low brain function. One of the issues is that these products could actually be less potent than Delta 9 THC. And another issue is that they could be more potent. An adverse event could be you didn't get high or you you got too high. Those are both unwanted experiences from a consumer getting a product, and not having an effect could lead to someone taking more and more of the product. Many of the potential harms, sorry, ah, many of the potential harms from these products are basically from a lack of regulation. And again, it's largely around that there aren't any guardrails around the synthesis of these products. Any old Joe can whip up a batch of isomers, put them in a product, and sell them the next day. Or at least in the medical cannabis or adult use space, that product would have to at least go through some rounds of testing and things like that. And Darwin, the ever studious and fastidious standards developer, is pointing out that there are specifications for labeling. So there are standards for companies to follow. There just isn't maybe an incentive for them to follow them or a regulation that requires it. So there are definitely tools out there to help you. All right, so I know you've all been waiting patiently for some data and not just a commentary about the hemp loophole. So we're going to transition into public health data, and we're lucky enough to actually have one of the authors here of the paper. And the paper was published in Drug, Healthcare, and Patient Safety by Dove Press. The paper is entitled Delta 8, a cannabis-derived tetrahydrocannabinol isomer, evaluating case report data in the Food and Drug Administration Adverse Event Reporting System, FAERS, database. Teresa Simon, welcome. This is, I'm definitely looking forward to hearing about this paper and why you did it. So take it away.
Yeah, so Jahan, is there anyone that we need to let in? Have you been letting people in while you're talking?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So great. So thanks everyone. Thanks, Jahan. So I'm sure that everyone on this call has been exposed to the Delta 8 THC controversy. It's now almost 3 years ago to the date, right? So in March of 2021, there was some of the first cases of poisoning reported in some of the different states. And when I would walk around, this one picture, I want to get high, try Delta 8, was taken in New Jersey. And it was everywhere. It was just like, free weed to get you high. It was going crazy. And so when we think about, something like this and the poisonings, my career has actually been, surrounded by side effects, right? And in pharmacovigilance, it's not just about the labeling, and it sometimes feels like the only effects that, we care about, the agency, like health authorities and the public care about the side effects. But in the reality of it, products get to market. Now, this is not a product that's went through the FDA process of a new drug application, but those products, they have to show effectiveness. And so my mantra is efficacy gets you to the market, but safety keeps you on the market, because a product that's been FDA approved, as soon as there's a safety signal, and what we're going to talk about, the database that I use to monitor this is one of many avenues that we monitor the safety of a product that's been FDA approved. So this falls into a slightly different, because it's not FDA approved. It would go into like cranberry and everything goes into a different database. But let's just walk you through what happened. So here is the timeline of the Delta 8 investigation that I did. So there was these first cases of poisonings in the news, and it was local news, but nevertheless it was the news. And that was March of 2021, so it's 3 years ago. And doing what I've been doing for many, many years, which is monitoring the safety of products, I thought, I'm going to check out and see what's happening in the FAERS database. Maybe there's something there. And I was really overwhelmingly surprised by 135 cases at that time were in the FAERS database. And so not to get too involved into what that is, consumers and healthcare providers can report it. So anyone can report to the FDA adverse event database. And so what I did was I put in immediately a freedom of information submission to get a listing of all these cases to really get a better understanding of what it was. I know that Jahan likes to take this story and tell it to everyone in meetings about how we got a CD disc with the cases on it. I couldn't believe it. And it took months. And they would only give me 15 cases at a time, and I had to go back. So that wasn't really going to work. I presented the data at a cannabis conference in August of 2021, and someone from the FDA was actually there during the presentation and suggested that we put in a request to the FDA for a listening session so we could present this data. So what was pretty surprising is I got my date October 1st, but September 14th, the FDA and CDC issued warnings around Delta 8. And so I like to believe that some of the data that's actually in this publication, did weigh in on they don't reference it, but that's okay. But I'm sure that it had something to contribute. And then fast forward, we submitted the manuscript, and here it is, and I'll present some of the data. So those of you that may not be in front of the computer, I'm presenting the data from the paper from Table 1. It's the number of overall Delta 8 cases and their descriptions. And so the cutoff here was, I think it was like December of 2021, because they do quarters. And we had 183 total cases. The definition of serious for regulatory is hospitalization, life-threatening, cancer, medically important events. And so there were 109, and you can see that there's a number of deaths. And then non-serious is something that didn't require any sort of like life-threatening or hospitalization. And here are the hospitalizations. There were more males than females that had this, and the distribution of the ages I find quite interesting because, really, overall, there was more than I would have expected under 18. And so to me, a limitation within the FDA database is the 18 to 64. It would really be nice to see what that distribution is, because my guess is that there's a lot of like 20-year-olds in states like Texas where cannabis is not legal, but Delta 8 is rampant, is probably, something in that group. You can see here the distribution of the healthcare providers versus the consumers and others. Now, what I'd like to also draw your attention to are the years. So the Hemp Farm Bill is 2018, and the number of cases are exponentially greater than prior to the Hemp Farm Bill. And then over here, I have the suspect active ingredient, because within the FAERS database, you have, whether it's just Delta 8 THC or whether it was through a device or with herbals, those types of things. So moving to Table 2. So Table 2 from the paper is the distribution of adverse events by something called system organ class, also known as body system. And the highest percentage of cases were in the respiratory, thoracic disorders, and then general disorders and administrative site conditions, followed by nervous system. And then the fourth one, injury, poisoning, and procedural complications. I'm not going to go into that too much because most of those things are like abuse and substance abuse terms. So now when we break down the most frequent or greater than 4% adverse events that were reported, dyspnea was one of the highest. In 18% of the cases, the patients experienced shortness of breath, also known as dyspnea. And you see here, drug abuse and toxicity to various agents are also pretty high. But then we see respiratory disorder, cough. So a lot of respiratory cases were reported. So then when we look at this and we do an analysis, so the FAERS database, there's no causality. So you can't say that this actually caused this. It's really for signal detection, signal generation. And so what the analysis that can be performed is called a disproportionality analysis. And so what you do is you look at the number of cases of a specific event and you compare it to all the other drugs and all the other reports within the FAERS database to see if this event is occurring disproportionately greater than all the other drugs and all the other reports. Now there's over 22 million case reports in this. And is there something going wrong, or am I doing okay?
You're doing great. Just let me know when you want me to move the slide forward.
Okay, sorry. Okay. Sorry about that. I'm flipping through them, but I don't realize that I'm not piloting the thing. Sorry about that to everyone.
No, no,
Okay,
we've been
so
keeping up. Don't worry.
okay. So table 4 in the paper is the relative odds ratios. And so anything above a 2 is considered a signal. And like if you look at dyspnea, which is the event that occurred, so 33 cases, and then when you look at those number of cases compared to all the cases of dyspnea in the FAERS database, the ROR is 13, and 2 is considered a signal. But when you look at 2018, right? So 2018, the signal was 2. There were 0 cases, and so then you get into sort of the complexities of 0 cases. And there is, in fact, in epidemiologic methods, a confidence interval around 0. So we
Teresa,
know that.
quick question. I know you're about to probably get into it, but AJ had a question about what is covered under respiratory disorders, and I was wondering if you could incorporate that. Um,
Sure. So if we go back, Jahan, to the table 3, so the dyspnea is under respiratory disorder, cough would be under there, pyrexia, oh no, not pyrexia. So pneumonia would be under there, oral pharyngeal pain might be under there. So I do have a graph, AJ, and I do have that where every respiratory event, but it's not included in this presentation, and I can give it to you where you would see every respiratory type of event that was reported. So when we go back to that SOC, I think there's 7. Oh yeah, there's 82. There were 82 types of respiratory events, and 33 of them were dyspnea. So I'm back in table 2, Jahan. If you go back to, yep, there we go. Top, yeah, the very top respiratory, yep. There you go. So there's 82 cases. And just so that everyone knows, I removed duplicates. So I did all the standard type of epi analyses where you don't have duplicates in place. So should we continue with the RORs? Yeah, okay. So I looked specifically, so I did look at specific events because these analyses are not actually easy to do, especially when you break it down by year, and then you have to go into the FAERS data and get all the cases from that year. And you have to do it kind of in one sitting because the data gets updated. And so, so you can't do one analysis one day and another on a different day. So total respiratory disorder, there were 17 cases. And then, so the ROR is 3. And over here, I did total seizure because that was pretty high as an event. And the ROR is 18.9. And then this total serious. So if you looked at all the serious cases for Delta 8 and compared it to all serious cases within FAERS, it's 2.8. But in 2021, you'll see that it's high. But prior to 2021, it still hovers around 2, indicating a signal. And in 2018, it's 1, which is really where it's supposed to be. Okay, so Jay, on next slide, please. Okay, so as I mentioned, the FDA and CDC did issue health alerts in September of 2021 for all Delta 8 products. It never hit the national news, which was pretty surprising for me. It hits like some of the local but not really, and social media, but it did not get any press on national news. So you can go to the last slide, then we can open it up, I think, for questions, right? So I continually monitor this, and I'm in the process of updating the manuscript because the numbers continue to creep up. And I'm also looking at other national data sources to look outside of the US to look at what Delta 8 cases look like. But I will mention that in 2022, almost the same number of cases in that year were reported as compared to the total number in the paper. So like I said, I'm in the process of updating this data. And so my favorite sort of cartoon here is it's brilliant to have invite an epidemiologist, Jayan, to the meeting. Thank you.
Always, no party is complete. So now's your chance, everyone. If you want to unmute your mic and just start a little discussion, we have 10 minutes or so. You can also, if you don't like talking on a microphone, you can put your question into the chat. But if you're interested in reading more about this topic, here are three other current papers. One about Delta H THC retail availability in a town in Texas. Also, a study on contaminants and what those implications are. And this really good one by Istan Javari, who I've met at conferences over the years, very thorough researcher, who we shared a figure from his study about his sort of inventory of semi-synthetic cannabinoid analogs. It's really great review. So this is a intense area of ongoing research.
Teresa, can I throw a question out at you?
Yeah.
The Q code that was seen on a previous slide on the Buds Info app, does it does it target Delta 8 specifically in any which way?
Yes. So after actually, thanks, Phil, because when I first saw this and I started to evaluate it, I created with a team, actually students, for Buds Info, and we created this data collection form to start collecting data on everything, right? So on cannabinoids, on cannabis, hemp products, whatever you want to call it. And we do have a fair number of cases for Delta 8. And I will tell you that, I mean, and I have data from, I think, 38 states now that's come in. So it's really a, what do you call it, Jahan? Guerrilla marketing that we're doing for this right now. We are in the process of trying to really build this out and partner with some health departments, some university settings, and also some registries to really start to push this out and have people use it. So anyone can use it. Share it with your friends, and if you haven't, and we also ask about the effect, right? So we ask not just about a side effect, but we ask about any effect that's unwanted, right? So to Jahan's point early on, if you got too high, that's an unwanted effect potentially. And so that's important to know as well. So to your point, Phil, yes, it does. It doesn't specifically ask about Delta 8. It does ask about the product, though, to name the product. And so we do get specific products like fire engine, something or other, and we do get like Delta 8. They have all kinds of crazy names, right? So we do get it.
Excellent. Dr. Malloy, I want to give you a chance to talk while we're waiting for some questions to come pouring in. If, I guess there's different types of people that come into the clinic. Some are, we can argue over what is a healthy normal, comes in and says, I'm just here for a checkup. And oh, by the way, doc, I'm using this product. What do you think? Versus, maybe a patient who might be looking to get pregnant or be pregnant, or have other medications they're taking. I mean, it just seems like a really, I mean, how would you approach this conversation?
Thanks. First of all, it's a hugely important topic, the use of cannabis and hemp-derived products in women and fathers of potential childbearing potential, even before pregnancy. Because there's evidence that even before conception, use of these products can be associated with adverse outcomes of pregnancy and offspring. My own experience as a clinician is that it's a pretty rare event for a pregnant or non-pregnant patient to initiate a discussion with a doctor by saying, I'm taking this product. What do you think, doctor? What I think happens more often is that we are not, as healthcare providers, are not aggressive, especially in women who are trying to get pregnant or are already pregnant, by just directing it. Are you taking, what are you taking? and include specific questions. We're all used to asking about alcohol and tobacco, and cannabis and hemp-derived products need to be on the list of things that we speak out. Primary care doctors shouldn't assume that the OBGYNs are doing it. That's the short answer.
Excellent. I'm gonna just see if there's any other questions. We have Dr. Malloy here.
Right. I have a question for Dr. Malloy, actually. And so I think that the whole basis of CERIUM, right? So think about like what my careers look like. I've interacted with physicians, pretty much my whole life, working from internal medicine offices to working with physicians in general clinical studies. And, you know, patients, don't always ask the question and around cannabis or even CBD, right? Even botanicals. They just started to recently document certain botanicals in medical records now. I mean, years ago, they never even asked about that. It was always alcohol and smoking were the only two things that they asked about. And 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 physicians were not trained in how to have the conversation. And so CERIUM was developed, it's my, I really want physicians to be able to have the conversation, to be able to be educated enough to have that conversation around cannabis and hemp derived products. And the labeling piece, I see that Darwin wants to make a pitch there. And so, yeah, we can do that. But I think that the label, especially like not for regulated cannabis, I think that you can pretty sure. I mean, when we talk to students, we talk about, if you're going to use cannabis, use something that's actually coming from a dispensary that's labeled, right? As regulated and labeled, as opposed to, a CBD product that you have no idea, of the standards or what's in it. So Phil, like, I think that, and the reporting of adverse events, I think that it's a whole full circle. What we're trying to do here, you and Jehan and me and Dr. Kamen and our broader team, right? We have a nice team where we're really trying to help educate healthcare providers and also do data collection. So Jehan, I know Darwin. I mean, I know Darwin as well, but I mean,
Yeah,
I think
so
that you're actually part of ASTM. So
yes, as a co-founder of the Standards Group. But real quick, we had a question about the paper, and then Darwin, I'd love for you to let us know about some of these standards initiatives. But AJ Nayak, Dr. Nayak had a great question. He mentioned that they were designing a study and were surprised to find Delta 9 easily available. Here's his quote, the entire landscape of what is legal and illegal in what state seems to center on whether it was derived from hemp or a non-hemp strain. Is this a correct assumption? And I would say it is a resounding yes. Um, uh, Darwin, do you want to just give like like a 30-second update? I think like we have a question from Ken, but I'd love, Darwin, you've been waiting patiently to just let us know about some of the initiatives about ASTM, which has this D37 cannabis committee. I don't know if you can unmute yourself, Darwin, and just jump
Yeah,
in.
of course, Jayab. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Hello, everyone. I won't take up much of your time at all. Um, I'm a volunteer member, like Jayon is, of ASTM International's D37 on cannabis, which is a group hopefully trying to create some of these needed standards that you all have talked about here. Some of the great initiatives that specifically the O3 on laboratory practices and test methods, as well as the O4 on processing and handling, and the O8 on personal use devices and appliances have started, which may be of interest to the research community here, is their vape device safety and testing initiative, with the hope of helping to create needed specifications and test methods for vape devices to ensure that they are indeed not only performing to a minimum specification like pressure drop, etc., but also a minimum safety specification to ensure the actual consumer is damaging themselves as least as possible when choosing vaporization as their method of consumption. And then the other one is a pre-roll analysis and characterization initiative. So very similar to the vape device safety and analysis initiative. Here we are looking to really understand what pre-rolls are and how to test them appropriately in order to collect data that can be used for not only aerosolized vapor characterization, but also emissions. So we're looking to develop topography and performance testing specifications, practices, test methods, etc. So hoping the research community might be interested in helping us do what I know it will be a bunch of research and studies to help collect and generate data that we will use to create these needed standards. And any guidance the research community can give to us along that journey to ensure we are developing standards that assist you, the better. Thank you so much.
That was fantastic, Darwin. Please put something in the chat for people to follow up with you or ASTM about that. I am definitely think I know of a couple operators who'd be interested in the pre-roll standards development, because I think it's important to have standards there, because there's always these rumors about pre-rolls being made from leftover cannabis or inferior cannabis, and I know that that's not true if you talk to some of the cultivators who take a lot of great care and pride in what they do. And we have another question coming in from Ken Walski, the founder and fearless leader of the Coalition for Medical Marijuana in New Jersey, also a healthcare professional. He has a statement and a question. Ken, do you wanna read it, or do you want me to read it? I see you pop on there.
Well, I just I've been advocating for mandatory education for healthcare providers on the endocannabinoid system as a condition for continued licensure in New Jersey. And I don't get a lot of support for this. I seem to be the only one advocating for it. But I mean, I do just see so much apathy and ignorance among many of the physicians in New Jersey about this, and I wonder if this is a reasonable approach.
Yeah,
Um,
so thanks. I mean, I totally understand, and I'm glad you're not alone anymore, right? I mean, so yeah, I mean, you're part of this group now. You were on last month, so thank you. And I think that it's a matter of, it's like another grassroots approach. I think that Jehan and I and Phil and our team, and we can brainstorm with you about how do we sort of get this to the docs, and I do know that, we worked with Drexel and some of these university settings that are developing their own all over again. And even though, we have already developed something. So you're not alone, but go ahead, Phil.
I see. Thank you for the comments, Ken. I see less apathy than I do ignorance and feeling of being intimidated. Where do I start to learn about this? I feel helpless in responding to my patients' questions. Where can I go to learn so I can at least have conversations and respond to my patients? Which is, I think, why Teresa started CERIUM, quite frankly. I don't see the day where there's going to be more regulations on cannabis. We are already overthinking in regulations on CME now. DEI, the MATE Act last year, to get your prescribing license, you have to do an 8-hour course on this and this. Every state is adding stuff on. I'm not sure it's going to be affected, and it will be fragmented anyhow, state by state. I think it's up to organizations like CERIUM and professional medical societies. It's going to take a long time.
but I think you're absolutely, Dr. Malloy and Ken, I think, and Teresa, right? The sentiment is the same, is that, you know, in a perfect world, this would be required education for any health professional, um, and that as AJ has just shared a comment here, is that they surveyed allergists and they observed a strong correlation between continued education in cannabis and a positive attitude in discussing cannabis exposure with patients, because that's I think this is really what the Journal Club's about, right? It's about discussions and us breaking down information to have a discussion. And I think, as Dr. Malloy pointed out earlier, right, we want patients and clinicians to be able to have these sort of open discussions. And maybe we don't know everything about every little detail about the risks and benefits of these products, but we can have a rational discussion. Um, we can help to navigate some of these waters as we see this explosion of product diversity, and how do we navigate it? So I think that that's great, and I think that's a great comment, AJ. Thank you as well. And it was a good question, Ken. I think, you know, we have to push harder to land closer, right? So if you aim for the moon and you land among the stars, it's not so bad, right? So if if you push for having the ECS required education, it'll at least raise, I think, awareness of it. And I think it's a good question. It's always good to review what is the value of education in helping clinicians do their job and fulfill their patients' needs in their practice. And so I don't think there's anything wrong with asking it to be evaluated alongside those other things to understand where it fits in. And so I think it's like that process of requesting it be required helps us understand its importance and where it fits in. So I would encourage you to keep pushing, because it will land somewhere in a place, and much like THC in a scheduling category, it doesn't just stay there, it moves around, until it finds its place. And we've seen, much like we've seen education and the relevance of the cannabinoid system move around, THC has been moving around the scheduling category from 1 to 2 to 3, to even having forms that are not scheduled right now in the form of hemp. So how's that for a Tuesday night analogy? So,
Medical schools could even start, and
Right.
guidance could be it could be very vague and open, like you must address this subject and not put any meat on it. Just that you have to address it.
Yeah, I
Just like
agree,
they're
because
doing.
I don't think that
Yeah.
they don't need to they don't need to agree or disagree, or whether or not that they advocate for or against it. It's not about that. It's more about having the information to discern whether they're taking something that would have a potential drug interaction. This is more about just another product that patients will be exposed to, and that they need to understand how to talk about it. So,
speaking of products and being exposed to them, I'm going to plug our next journal club. Again, these are on the first Tuesday of every month. That's our plan, and we're sticking to it for now. But our next one, May 7th at 8 p.m. Eastern, we're going to look at a systematic review that's actually looking at a lot of different cannabinoid products in clinical studies and reviewing them for acute pain. So we think this could be a fun discussion. As the AI cartoon shows, is once you're already in pain, it can be quite difficult to find a product that's maybe a non-opioid that it could help you manage the pain and recover. And you might be looking at a hemp product or a cannabis product as one of those arrows in the quiver to help you, attack the condition. But where do you start, and how do you navigate, and what does the evidence say out there in the literature? So I think that should be a fun discussion. It's definitely, I think, we'll have a little bit of discussion about how the authors selected their data for inclusion or exclusion in their analysis. That's always, a curious sight, but where does the data lie in different preparations? Is it a CBD rich or a THC rich or a blend? Is there a certain administration form that works well? That's going to be the focus of next week's journal club.
next month.
Or next month. I want it next week. I can't get enough of these. Well, with that, I want to thank everyone for taking time out to join us today. And Dr. Malloy and Teresa, I couldn't do this without you. And if there's any final comments you'd like to make, otherwise, we can call it a wrap for this evening.
Perfect.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for attending and participating in the discussion. Darwin, Ken, AJ. So thank you so much for your participation. This is what it's all about. So I really hope to see you on the on a future journal club. Thank you so much. Have a great night and a great week.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.